Hello everyone, welcome back to Edubbey Global Solution. Today we'll be discussing firms and production. What do we mean by firms and what do we mean by production? Our first slide here is talking about the demand for factors of production, which are land, labor, capital, and enterprise. Of course, we have done firm before. Of course, our firm is a business entity, just single business entity. But our production is just the combination of various input into output. Now we have the demand for factors of production here. We have the factors that determine the demand for factors of production, which are the demand for the products, the availability of factors, the price of the factors, and the productivity of the factors. Now let us explain this thing one after the other. The demand for the product, that is, the more goods and services demanded by the consumer, the more factors of production that will be demanded by the firm also when they are producing goods. And we also have the availability of factors. Of course, firm also demand factors that are easily available for them in producing goods. And we also have price of the factors. Of course, if labor is more expensive than capital, firms will demand more capital and vice versa. At the same time, if capital is more expensive than labor, firm will demand labor more than capital. We also have the productivity of factors. Of course, if labor is more productive than capital, more labor will also be demanded by firms and vice versa. Those are the factors of production in determining the demand for factor of production. Now we move to the next slide where we have the labor and capital intensive production. What do we mean by labor and capital intensive production? Now here we are going to drag the word into the correct boxes. We have dash is the where laborer are employed more than other factors. We have the other factors here in the brackets, and we have the third one to be the enterprise. Now what's supposed to be here where more laborer are employed more than factor? Of course, that should be labor intensive production. And we also have employed and other factors. What do you think should be the other factors here? Of course, we have done factor of production. We have labor here. We have enterprise here. What should be the remaining? We have land. And we also have capital. We have done with labor intensive production. It is where more labor are employed than other factors, which is land, capital, and enterprise. Now, labor intensive production is usually adopted in small scale industry, especially those producing personalized products. Of course, example of labor intensive production are just like hotels and restaurants. Now we also have the capital intensive production. Let us drag it. Capital intensive production, it is where more capital, that is, we have machine, equipment, tools is employed other than other factors of production. Of course, capital intensive production is also a production that require a relatively high level of capital investment. Now let us check here if we have drag it to the right. Of course, this thing is interchangeable. Of course, if you put this capital here also, and if you put the land here also, it should be the same things you are dealing with other factor of production. But let us do it. Let's try it again. Here we have the labor intensive production, Habi. Yes, we have the labor intensive production here. And the first one, capital here, and land as it is arranged. Yes. And we have capital intensive production. Now let us check here. Can you see? We are good to go. Now we move to the next slide. Moving to the next slide, we now have the advantages of labor intensive production. When a firm is adopting labor intensive production, what could be the advantages of it? Now we have customized products are easier to make, less expensive machinery cost. Of course, when there is labor, there will not be more using of machinery in labor intensive production. Also, women can use their own initiative and use it to solve problem. Of course, now we have the disadvantages. We have the disadvantage to be quality of product can vary due to expertise of the workers. Of course, that's yes. Now we also have skilled workers takes time to train. Of course, it takes time to train a worker. We also have skilled workers will be paid more than unskilled worker. That is true. Now we move to the next slide. We have one past question here. What is the main difference between capital intensive production and labor intensive production? What do you think can be the answer? The resources on which the production relies, the output that the production process creates, the market structure of the production process, and the size of the firm that uses the production process. What do you think can be the main difference between the capital intensive production and the labor intensive production? Of course, it is the resources on which the production relies. That is the answer. Now we move to the next slide. Moving to the next slide, we also have the advantages of capital intensive production. Now, what should be the advantages and disadvantages of capital intensive production? We have there will be less employee wages and cost. Of course, when the firm is using machinery, equipment, and tools in their production, it will less employee wages and cost. Now we also have quality can be standardized every time. Of course, they make sure that the materials are filled for their purposes, and also machinery can work continuously 24/7. Of course, if assuming if it is labor, it has a limited time of working hour. We also have the disadvantages, more difficult to customize orders, breakdown in production can be costly, and also initial setup cost of machinery are high. That is true. Now we move to the next slide. We also have past question related to the labor intensive and capital intensive. Now, what is an advantage of labor intensive production and what is an advantage of capital intensive production here? Now, under labor intensive, we have each item can be individually made. Is that so? Keeps unemployment down. Workers have to work hard. Workers have pride in the product. What should be the advantages of labor intensive here? Let us check the capital intensive also. We have the average cost of production are low, fixed costs are high, there is a ready market for the products, machinery may break down. What should be the advantages of both? Of course, under labor intensive production, each item can be individually made, and here capital intensive average cost of production are usually low. Now we move to the next slide. We also have past question here. Germany is considered a capital intensive economy, while Indonesia is considered a labor intensive economy. What does it mean about the economies of Germany and Indonesia? Now, capital is relatively cheaper than labor in Germany, while labor is relatively cheaper than capital in Indonesia. Now, let us check our questions again. Capital is considered Germany is considered a capital intensive economy. That is, they are adopting capital intensive economy, while Indonesia is adopting labor intensive economy. Why do they do that? Now we have the second options to be relatively more low cost labor is available in Germany, while capital is more efficient than labor in Indonesia. Is that so? Indonesia has a higher growth in its population size than Germany? No. Germany has many primary sector workers, while Indonesia has many tertiary sector workers. Of course, no. Capital is relatively cheaper than labor in Germany. That is why they are adopting capital intensive production, and at the same time, Indonesia Also, now we move to the next slide. Moving to the next slide, we have the difference between production and productivity. Now, what do we mean by production and what do we mean by productivity? Production is the transforming of raw materials, that is input, to finished or semi-finished good and services, which is known as output. While productivity measure the amount of output, that is the finished good and services, that can be produced from a given amount of input over a period of time. Now let us check this diagram out. Here we have the production function, and we have the production inputs here with our land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. And we also have the output, that is production is the transforming of inputs into output. We also have the productivity here, which measure the amount of output, that is amount of the production function given to produce output over a period of time. Now let us move to the next slide. Moving to the next slide, we have the influences on production. What are the factors that can influence production? First, we have demand for products. Of course, the more the demand from consumer, the more the production. And we also have the price and availability of factors of production. If factors of production are readily available, of course, there will also be more production. We also have capital. The more capital are available to consumer, to producer rather, the more investment in the production. And we also have the profitability. The more profitable producing a product is, the more the production of the product will be. We also have government support. Of course, government support by giving money in grants, tax breaks, and so on can also lead to more production. Those are the factors that influence production. Let's move to the next slide. Moving to the next slide, we also have first question here. The development of artificial intelligence in machines raises the productivity of capital. What should be the effect of this? Now let us check the options. The supply of capital will decrease, the cost of production will increase, the price of capital will fall, the demand for capital will increase. What should be the effect if the development of an artificial intelligence machine raises the productivity of capital? Of course, demand for capital will increase. That's good. Let's move to the next slide. Moving to the next slide, we now have the influences of productivity. What are the factors that can improve productivity? Also, now we have division of labor. Of course, we have done division of labor, that is each worker being specialized in a different task. Also, and each worker being specialized in different tasks will also lead to an increase in productivity. And we also have skills and experienced labor force. Of course, skills and experienced labor force will be more productive. We also have workers motivation. The more motivated a workforce is, the more productive they will be. Of course, that is true. We also have technology. Of course, more technology introduced into production process will also lead to increase in productivity. And we also have the quality of factors of production. Of course, when replacing old machinery with new one, it can also lead to an increase in efficiency and productivity. Moving to the next slide, we also have, I think we have two questions here. What is the disadvantage of employer of switching to production using division of labor? What should be our answer? What is the disadvantages to employers of switching to production using division of labor? Now let us check out our options. Training time decreases, flexibility of workers is lost, average cost decreases, repetition of tasks save time. What should be the disadvantages of employers switching to production using division of labor? Of course, the answer is flexibility of worker will be lost. Now moving to the next question, we have what is usually considered to be an advantage of advantage to a firm of using division of labor. We're also talking about the advantages here also. What should be considered to be an advantage to a firm of using division of labor? Now we have increased mechanization, high labor turnover, movement of labor between tasks, needs for quality control. Of course, it will increase their mechanization. Now that's that on that, we move to the next slide. Moving to the next slide, we also have past question. Which statement proves there has been an increase in productivity for a factory making tractors? Now we have 10% more worker results in a 10% increase in tractor to be produced each week. Is that the answer? Starting a night shift leads to an increase in production of 10 tractors a day. Production increases as more workers are hired. Output per workers increase from 3 tractors to 4 tractors per month. Of course, output per worker increase from 3 tractors to 4 tractors per month is our answer, because it's the one that proves that there's an increase in productivity for a factor making tractor. That's our answer. This will be the end of our class on firms and production. Stay tuned to our website www.edubbey.com. See you in the next class.